All right, thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. Of course, I'm the author of Love, Hope, Lyme, What Family Members, Partners, and Friends Who Love a Chronic Lyme Survivor Need to Know. And today's a very special episode because I'm going to be featuring Wendi Lindenmuth, who actually was the editor of Love, Hope, Lyme. She's also the author of Dear Lyme Disease, which Wendi was one of the first books that I read in the spring of 2021 when I wanted to discover more about how those who we love are affected by chronic Lyme disease. And I read your book. I got it on Amazon, connected with you on Facebook. And one day you just posted something. If anybody wants to write their book on Lyme disease, reach out to me. And I know that you were probably expecting people who were chronic Lyme survivors. I know I was probably different. And we just started talking and you were very, very helpful in helping me publish Love, Hope, Lyme, What Family Members, Partners, and Friends Who Love a Chronic Lyme Survivor Need to Know. And we're going to be talking today about your new book, Listen to Your Body, Holistic Choices for Managing Chronic Pain. I just want to remind people that I'm not a doctor. This show does not replace medical care. If you're struggling with Lyme disease or co-infections or any chronic pain, please seek proper medical care. I also want to let people know if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Give us a thumbs up. We would greatly appreciate it. Leave us a comment. We'll get to them all. Wendi, we've had some shows where we've had dozens of comments, so please feel free to connect. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching, if you've seen my Facebook post or the article on LymeDisease.org, please share that as well. All right, Wendi Lindenmuth, we're doing today's interview in March of 2026. And I remember when I first read Dear Lyme Disease, which I guess is the precursor to Listen to Your Body, which you told me is kind of the follow-up, the second version, if you will. I remember thinking like, wow, this is a very powerful book. And you went into a lot of the mindset, right, that people struggling with chronic Lyme disease might want to consider to help them go through the pain. And again, I brought you on to edit my book. You did a fabulous job. And I've been following you. We've been friends. We've been talking ever since. So it's great to see you. Congratulations on Listen to Your Body. I read the book, and you cover so much ground. There's over 30 chapters of things that you've thought about that people need to people go through. And I remember when I wrote my book and you edited it, you said you were waiting for the next chapter, and it's like, okay, yep, Fred covered that. And then the next chapter, yep, Fred covered that. And I was reading Listen to Your Body. It was like, boy, I heard about this. I heard about this. I heard about this. And you did a great job talking about how chronic Lyme survivors can think about what they need to do and then put an action plan in place and then have grace as they go through this process, which all of our listeners know is very challenging. So it's great to have you here. I'm very excited. So tell us about whatever you want to tell us about your story and what brought you to here and now.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. Yeah, I'm glad I can be here today. So I guess I'll start with my story. So 2015, I ended up with chronic Lyme disease, and I was a competitive athlete and worked full time in medical device, and so this particular day, I went for a really, really long bike ride. I was feeling really fatigued, came home, and I think I slept for like 20 hours or something. I mean, it was a long time. Woke up, and from that time forward, I couldn't walk. My brain just wasn't working. So a lot of stuff happened. I ended up going to lots of different doctors, which is very common. I mean, because no one really knew, and especially, I mean, that's, over 10 years ago. Finally got diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease. And, a lot of the Western health practitioners were really helpful, but I also found that I needed to be like my own scientific investigator, your own self-advocate, which a lot of us find ourselves in that position. And so just went through this healing journey of so I mean, I like being intuitive and learning what your body needs. And I also like to back it up with scientific evidence. That was really important to me. And so I wrote Dear Lyme Disease from a lot of people just saying, you need to write this book. People need to know about it. And like like, well, I don't know. I don't know how to, be an author, a writer. And I got help and then published it. And so many people could relate to it. And I was like, wow, I guess I really did have a story, to share with people. And I also had an energy healing practice at the time. And so I was seeing people and I'm like, I need to get this. That's why I wrote my book, because I wanted more people to be able to reach that had Lyme disease. And then, so with this book, this new book is kind of a revision of it or an expansion of it. And I realized, well, a lot of people have chronic pain. I mean, you have chronic pain, with Lyme disease, and I want to hit a larger target. So people who are living with managing, chronic pain, and I share, my story and all of that I just shared. And it's a lot more detail and then I learned so much. And so, there's so much information that, a lot of people might not know, a lot of people might know. And the perspective of having chronic Lyme or just chronic pain, you function differently. Your brain feels different and you read different. So I wanted to come like have a voice through my book of being compassionate and saying, hey, just have grace, with yourself. You've been through a lot. Here are a lot of different alternatives, but take your time. And if it doesn't work, look for something else. Like there's hope. There's always something else. So don't give up.
Yeah, so let's get deep into the book. I just want to make a quick comment. First off, you're a very good writer, and you are very, it comes through in the writing about, you know, being compassionate with yourself and giving yourself grace. And one thing we talk a lot about on the Love Hope Line podcast is, uh, you know, if you're listening to this podcast right now, again on YouTube or Apple, whatever it might be, you were bitten by a tick, right? 99% of the people, maybe you were bitten by a spider, whatever it might be. But typically you're bitten by a tick
Mhm.
because you were walking through the park or you were hiking or you were walking through Central Park in New York City, right? Because it's a global epidemic.
Yeah.
And you didn't smoke 4 packs of cigarettes, you didn't do hazardous things, you were in your backyard, right?
Yeah. Or my dogs were outside and they came
Or
in
your
and
dogs. Exactly.
yeah.
And so, there's a lot that people go through and you cover everything. You cover the pain, you cover a lot of things, you cover the emotional, mental, and spiritual side. Let's hit on a couple of things. Take us through maybe your 5 key things that you want to get across to the Love Hope Lyme audience today.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first thing is believing that you can heal. A lot of times we get a diagnosis and then we make that our label. And like, you end up going down this rabbit hole of research and like, oh man, or you belong to different groups that maybe aren't as positive. So you kind of get stuck. So you need to believe that you can heal. I think that's number one. And then it goes along with mindset and that as well. And once you do that, then I think that opens up to like, okay, I can do this. And then it just you just feel lighter about it and, um, just more motivated, I guess,
So
about
you make
that.
a good point. I mean, I first met you on Facebook, and I remember it was the spring of 2021. I went to Facebook and I typed in Lyme for the first time ever, and I was shocked to find over 1,000 groups,
Yeah.
some with tens of thousands of people. And I met you on one of those, and again, I bought your book and read your book, et cetera. And yeah, when you go to social media, you see that you even today. Again, we're doing today's interview in March of 2026. I went to one of the Lyme groups and someone posted, "Will we ever recover from this?" Right. And
Mhm.
then you see people chiming in with, "Here's what I did." But even someone who's, you know, you're new to it, you hear these things. And we like to say that, a lot of people go through a long process to discover they have Lyme and they think that it's solved because they now know that they have Lyme. And then we all know what comes after that. What might be your advice on how you can believe that you can heal?
Yeah, I think, I mean, a lot of it is, like I said, like mindset.
Mhm.
For me, I had to step away from a lot of the social media and stuff like that because I mean it just it wasn't doing me any good. So I stepped away from it a little bit. I did meditation, I did prayer, and just doing some real like soul searching. And then I looked up, I do like being on social media, so I looked up, positive ways to heal. And reading some other books from other authors of how to change your mindset and believing. So I
Great.
think those are helpful tips.
Yeah, and you have those tips, strewn throughout the book as well. You cover nutrition. So,
Mhm.
I see, obviously it's all about reducing the inflammation and, various strategies. Give us some of your thoughts on how people can best focus on nutrition.
Yeah, I love this subject. Um, so with nutrition, I mean, a lot of people hear, well, don't eat inflammatory foods. And so what does that mean? And and it's a really, really important topic because if you eat inflammatory foods, which is sugar, there's dairy, there's soy, and gluten. I mean, there's a few other things, but those are the main things. And a lot of the foods that we eat have all that in it and packaged foods. So you have to learn, like if so your body, and let's say if you have Lyme disease, it loves sugar. I
Mm.
mean, it feeds on it. Germs feed on it. Bad bacteria, they feed on all of that. So when you reduce it, and a lot of times like it goes in steps. So, maybe clean out your cupboards and
Mm.
get rid of the packaged food. Start with that. Maybe stop with drinking soda or pop, and juices. Um, but yeah, I found my personal experience when I reduced all of that, and I actually got a blood test for allergies because even like so-called healthy foods might not be good for you. Um, like for instance, like quinoa, I can't eat that, and supposedly that's really good for you, and oatmeal so you kind of just have to listen to your body too. I mean, if you eat something and afterwards you feel really inflamed, if you don't feel good, that's telling you something. So it's just, being proactive and listening to your intuition. But I think that's a good way to start.
Very good. I once spoke with a Lyme literate medical doctor who said to me, I asked him, I said, if you can only give one bit of advice, what might it be? And he said, it all comes down to sleep. So I know
Mm.
you cover sleep in the book as well. So give us some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree too. Sleep, if I had to probably choose one thing, I mean, all these are important, but for me, when I start not feeling good, right away I'm like, I need to sleep. And so during your sleep process, that's when your body has time to recover. So I mean, it's just as simple as that. So, I mean, all these functions happen while you're sleeping, scientifically. But mainly that's what it does. It's a recovery time, from your brain all the way down to your toes. And try to get as much sleep as you can. And I mean, there's a while like before this happened, with me, I didn't like naps. I thought, oh man, I'm not going to take a nap. I don't have time for that. I love naps. So if you can get a nap in, do that. Your body needs that. It's telling you that for a reason. Get sleep and rest.
Does it matter when you sleep? You mentioned naps, but are we talking basically 8 hours at night? Or if you have Lyme, have you found that you need maybe 10 hours? Or
Ah,
is it
good
a
question.
personal thing? Or what can you give some guidance on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the typical guidance is, between 7 and 8 hours of sleep. But if you have, chronic pain and Lyme disease, most likely you're going to need a lot more than that. So again, like if you do need more sleep, give yourself some grace with that because again, your body needs that to heal. And, sometimes it might be 10 hours. I would sleep 10, 12 hours almost every single night. I mean, for years. And I learned to be okay with that.
Yeah. I want to talk about one thing you cover in the book is getting out into nature and things like sunlight. I remember when I was writing the book Love, Hope, Lyme, I interviewed a longtime chronic Lyme survivor who said that he found a place of peace by just being out in the sun. right?
Yeah.
And the vitamin D, maybe that comes, from sunlight, if you will. And I interviewed someone for the Love Hope Lyme podcast who got back into nature. And I remember when I published that particular episode of Love Hope Lyme about being in nature and going into the woods and the beach and all those kinds of things, a number of people responded, I ain't going into the woods. There's a trepidation with that. When people with chronic Lyme see deer, they don't see beautiful Bambi. They see a tick Hilton, right? That may transmit, if you will. But you cover the fact that you found, and I know I see a lot of pictures of you in Facebook walking your dogs, out in the woods and snow-covered prairies and things like that. Give us some of your insights in that, and why did you make it a point to cover this?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because I do talk about nature, and I post tons of things out in nature. But there was a time where I was afraid to go outside, and I had to get over that because obviously, I got a tick bite from nature. And, but again, with believing how I could heal and my mindset, I had to get over it. And I'm like, dang it, this is not going to define me. So I took steps. And I remember just sitting on my porch, for a while and just, and then like, okay, I think I'm okay. I'm going to go for a short walk, doing little steps. And then coming back and like, hey, I was able to do that. I think that's okay. And just sitting in the sun, I mean, we know that there's lots of benefits, with the vitamin D to increase the hormone, and the sunlight, just there's all these different rays that come in, and it helps your mitochondria, which is the little batteries in your cell. And that is just this huge, topic that, for another time. But that helps your cell repair and your body. And, and we can talk about frequencies also. So there's different frequencies that, come from nature. And then so, if you're kind of, feeling low and you go outside, you feel the sun, you breathe in all the good, from the trees, then it slowly increases your frequency or your vibration. And then all the icky stuff that's inside of you, to put it simply, it doesn't like that environment anymore. And it's like, ooh, we don't like this. And then it's going to go away and you're going to feel so much better.
Yeah, I agree. Again, a lot of my listeners know that I don't have Lyme disease, but I wrote the book to understand what someone once in my life was going through. And I'm a big believer in frequencies. As a matter of fact, I go to an office every day, and throughout the day, I'm in the office. When I'm doing like basic computer work, I listen to just basic 432 megahertz throughout the day, and
Yeah.
it just drones throughout. But I feel, becoming alive, and I know a lot of people use technology to use the frequencies to hone in on various parts of their body. A lot of people, Wendi, again, I'm talking to Wendi Lindenmuth, the author of Listen to Your Body. Uh, a lot of people who listen to the Love Hope Line podcast listen because they're looking for support, right?
Mhm.
And I used to think that my audience was going to be people like me, someone who was supporting someone with Lyme or, a caregiver, if you will, whatever. But 95% of the people who listen to the podcast and who've read the book are Lyme survivors who are looking either for more support, ways to ask for support, ways to ask the community for support. You cover that in the book pretty often as well. So give us some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we can't do this alone. I mean, we can't live life alone, either. So finding support that helps you positively. So whether it's a good friend, it's relatives, it's your pastor, if you find that social media groups are helpful, then that's a great place to be. I mean, you have to decide what's working and not, for you. But I think it's easy that when you're not feeling good, you don't want to bother anybody, or being a burden. And I think we all go through that. So you can't stay stuck in that. So
Mm.
just reach out. And even if anyone wants to reach out, to me, for some support and guidance, I would love that. And we all need that person, to get through whatever we're going through.
Yeah. And again, I thank you for making that offer again. Your books are great. This one's really good. You cover so many things. And like I mentioned a little bit before, it's very well written. So it's a good book to go through and to keep referring back to because, you have over 30 chapters of various things, and we've talked about a couple of them here. I wanted to address one more before I ask you for your final thoughts. One of the first chapters in the book is communicating with your pain.
Mhm.
And, we talk a lot about mindset on the podcast, and we talk a lot about mental health and emotional health and spiritual health. Unfortunately, people with Lyme disease have pain,
Right.
real challenging, sometimes unforgiving pain. Give us some of your insights. Why did you create a chapter called Communicating with Your Pain? What does that mean, and what is your advice?
Yeah. I know I feel like I'm getting a little teary about this because it was a huge realization when I thought, your pain is here. My pain is within me. And it's obviously there for a reason. And, a lot of times in pain, we cover it up with, whatever drug of choice or, um, just trying to ignore it. But it never goes away. And I think that was probably my greatest learning lesson is to say, okay, hey, I'm going to start listening to my pain, but how do I do that? So it was getting quiet within myself and asking my body, like, okay, where is my pain? And you can do this through meditation, or you can just stop and take a deep breath. If you're working and you feel something, just take a deep breath and just like, okay, I'm feeling this, in my legs. And then ask, all right, body, what is this pain in that area? What is it trying to tell me? And maybe at first you don't hear anything, but keep on practicing. And sometimes you might hear a message, sometimes you might get a visual of something or just a voice message, and write these down, and you can kind of keep track of that. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like your pain's probably not going to go away 100%. So learning to live with it, learning to have a positive relationship with it, which might sound odd, but it totally changes. I mean, again, we talked about frequency. It changes the frequency in your body. And if we keep on sending pain, these mad, angry thoughts, we're going to keep those mad, angry thoughts in our body. But if we start saying, okay, you are allowed to be in my body right now, it changes the energy around it because it's never been told, hey, you're allowed to live in my body and it's okay. And it doesn't mean that you're allowing it to live there forever. It's just hearing it. And then that changes everything.
Again, I've learned so much, and we've talked about so much on the Love Hope Line podcast. Probably um, the thing that's kind of risen to the top with a lot of Lyme survivors I talk to is that you want to get to a place where you're regulating your central nervous system. And a lot of what you talk about through the book are techniques and strategies and helping people understand what they can do to get there. And then you can, hopefully move to a more positive place to do a lot of the things that you're talking about. And your book is a great guide to get you there. It's almost like a cookbook, if you will, on how to get to the place where the reality is almost every chronic Lyme survivor I've spoken to wants to get to.
Yeah.
They want to get to the place where they can live a great life and go to parties and go to social events and do things with their children and travel and live without being within the strictures of chronic Lyme. All right, Wendi Lindenmuth, the book is Listen to Your Body, Holistic Choices for Managing Chronic Pain. You can find it anywhere where you buy your books. Again, I want to acknowledge Wendi. She was the editor of Love, Hope, Lyme, and it's been great to follow you and know you, and I applaud you for this book. It really is a well-written, comprehensive guide that any chronic Lyme survivor can value, and they can share with their family members to understand in more detail of what they're going through. Wendy, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to end this show with for chronic Lyme survivors?
I guess just based on the frequency, I think one of the easiest things to do, like you said, how you just turn some music on, different frequencies. That was probably the easiest thing because when you're sleeping, you can't move. Get some headphones on and go to YouTube, look up healing frequencies or low frequency, And just sitting there and listening it will change your nervous system. It will, goes to all the different neurons, pathways to change things. And that's probably the simplest way if you want to get started.
Very good. All right, once again, I want to thank Wendi Lindenmuth. Listen to your body. My name is Fred Diamond, and this is the Love Hope Lyme podcast.